Hello, emerging producers. Happy New Week. Today on the channel, we are diving into the intersection of art and business in film. And I'm honored to be joined by a powerhouse in the African film and advertising space, Tolulope Olumide Ajayi, also known as Tolu Ajayi. Tolulope Olumide Ajayi is a director, producer, and accomplished creative professional with a rich career spanning advertising, broadcast, production, and filmmaking. His journey began remarkably early as a cartoonist intern at Vanguard Newspaper at just 16, and he has since evolved into a two-decade career filled with passion, creativity, and business acumen. He directed award-winning short films like The Encounter, which earned a grand jury special mention at AFRIF, a place on Newsweek's top 10 Nigerian films, and best soundtrack at the AMVCA. His work is in advertising earned international accolades, including a Laurel Bronze Medal and a Platinum Award at the Summit International Awards. Tolulope has also made his mark in long-form storytelling with notable works like Over the Bridge, the mystery series Diiche, and the newly released Whispers in the Wires. Whether directing episodes of MTV Sugar or Nigeria beloved soap opera Tinsel, Tolulope consistently blends strong narrative with commercial viability. In this conversation, we explore how he has been able to scale his project from pitching and financing to production and distribution, and how emerging filmmakers can balance creative integrity with profitability. So if you are looking to build a career where storytelling meets strategy, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
Hi, my name is Tolulope Ajayi. I'm a filmmaker, creative educator, and I was an advertising professional for 22 years.
So, you started as a cartoonist at Vanguard at 16. How did that creative spark lead you into filmmaking?
Yes, I always like to say my journey as a creative was a series of, was a domino effect. So I started drawing when I was 14, and I grew up in Ilorin, Kwara State, and we lived a really quiet life. And what I used to do was, I loved animation and loved drawing, so I taught myself how to draw. And I'll draw a lot of stuff. And my production rate then was pretty high, high. So I had a lot of drawings all over my room. And I got into Vanguard through exhibiting, turning my room essentially into like a gallery. So I had lots of sizes of drawings all across the room. So an uncle came from Lagos to visit us. Then he came to see me in my room, and he was quite interested in what I was doing. And he said he knows exactly what I would do. So he called his friend who was an editor then of Vanguard, and that led to me having an internship as an internship as a cartoonist in Vanguard then. And it was from then, somebody else within my family said, oh great, so you are the artist, so why don't you go to advertising? So by the time I was 18, I was doing another internship in an ad agency. Then from my ad agency, I was introduced to so many other things. I was introduced to training. I was introduced to learning about marketing communications, and ultimately from advertising I made my way into film. So it's a long way around.
You mentioned that you have over 20 years in advertising.
Yes.
How have those two worlds influenced each other in your work?
Yeah, we were making, in advertising, when you're doing it really well, commercials were called films, but there were 30-second films, there were 15-second films, there were 45 seconds and 60-second films. The training in advertising that you get is super intense. It's very driven about quality. You learn about budgets, you learn about clients, you learn about about the impact of a frame. You need a frame that's able to tell a story in a very short amount of time. So there's a lot of accuracy, mental agility, creative training that comes if you're working in advertising, and it's very fast. It's also, very intense because you're doing it for a client. So my journey into film essentially came with understanding so much. I learned about presentation skills. I learned about negotiating. I learned about budgeting because I started off as a producer. I became a director. Directing is the last thing I did, to be honest. I actually started out as producing. So it's a really good runway to take off. It's just that the negative side I feel of it is you overthink. There's too much analysis paralysis if you come into advertising, because you'll be second guessing yourself a lot because there are multiple ways you can actually achieve something.
What's your approach to securing funding for films? Do you have any strategies that have worked repeatedly?
My initial approach was just funding myself. When I started off, my first couple of films I do it myself. I get the gear myself. I arrange. Because I started off in production, I was a producer in advertising, so I'd leverage either relationships. Relationships are good for your first set of films. Uncles, family, friends, and that you put all your effort into it, and you create your exposure to debt is much lower. Not because you're committed to delivering a product, but it's more like a support. And if you manage it well, it can parlay into something much, much bigger. So I would say that should be a good opportunity to start. After you have something in your hands to show, you can now go talk to a bank. I'm sure that also you can talk to a bank, can talk to financial institutions, and begin to do something. Other ways to raise funding is to talk to other production companies, particularly friends that want to back you, and having seen your work, they want to bet on a winning horse, so to speak. So that would be another way. I'll talk to other professionals who might have some cash and want to either give finances, money, or something else. Before you actually start talking to huge financial institutions, try to have made collaborations, funding through collaborations, funding through, so you have more softer ways and easier ways to receive money, or people who believe in you, than before you actually go out all the way to financial institutions and take it on.
For aspiring filmmakers in Africa,
Yes.
what advice would you give when approaching investors or sponsors for support?
Have something in your hand. Be very prepared. Prepare yourself for that day. I recall one of my younger colleagues in the industry got a gig. It was one of the youngest teams that got a gig when Amazon was in Nigeria. And I recall he was very prepared. He and his team had their phones ready. They had put the entire pitch that they had on their phones. And this Amazon executive had just come to Afrif, and they were waiting for a moment to be able to secure that win. And they're very young. They didn't hand out cards. They were very immediate with pitching her on the spot, literally at Afrif in a hall. So as soon as they saw a window of opportunity, people were not talking to her. All three of them had the pitch ready on the phone. So preparation is very important, but have something in your hand. Have the deck ready. Have a video of what you want to do. Nowadays we have AI. You can generate a small short film synopsis, something that's eye-catching, so that when you have that moment that you finally get to meet these people, you won't have to pass a camera through the eye of the needle, because that's literally getting these opportunities are few and far between. So you need to be very prepared. You need to be working on the deck presentation today. You need to be working on everything that's necessary for that meeting place, because you never know when it might happen. So have something in your hand, have a good pitch, be very prepared, have a good pitch, have something that everybody is not doing, so that makes you stand out, and come with a lot of enthusiasm, come with a love for the game, for the craft of film.
How do you decide which stories are worth investing your time, money, and resources into?
Okay, so that's a strong question. There are three ways to look at your decision for a film. There are three ways to look at it. I think I'll be a little bit. You have to decide whether, and this depends on what stage you are as a filmmaker. There are times you're just deciding to make a film for somebody. So I'm making this film for the audience. I want people to have a thrill of a spectacle I'm creating. I want the audience to experience this. Sometimes people say, I want to make the first, I want to make this, you've never seen anything like this before. Certain showmen want to make films for an audience. They want them to experience something. So if a script, you find a story that has that element, you want to invest in that. Other times, you're making a film for, this film looks like it matches my aspirations. Maybe the production company is one that is famous. So if I'm at a level as a filmmaker and I want to get my name out there, I would make this film to get my name out there to get some attention. And there are times to make films like that. The choices we make. I've certainly shot a few TV series that I felt would have some more traction. Then, of course, that also works with making certain films because the money is good, which is just a professional decision. Then you get to a certain stage where there's a certain story you had in your heart that you don't think you'd be able to continue living life if you haven't put this story out there. The story is partly for the audience, but the story is also for you. And at that stage, you're saying, okay, great. So those are the three, for me, parameters you're really, really thinking about when you're making these choices.
You've had films like The Encounter, Special Day, and Screen International. What does it take to make a film festival worthy?
What does it take to make a film festival worthy? Okay. I think what's sort of very critical, because this leads us to the conversation everybody's having right now about making films that travel, that are global. I think, and these are just some of my thoughts. My thought on the matter is, film in itself, by its nature, is universal. It's a universal language. That's why we know, without knowing Japanese, we can watch the works of Akira Kurosawa, understand context, or watch Korean films, which this generation tends to do, and you still understand what's going on without understanding the language. So perhaps one of the things that's necessary excuse me, is to be able to tell stories with visually. A lot of films need to be visual. It's a visual medium. It's a medium that expresses thoughts and ideas through a frame and with other elements of mise-en-scène, of course, but you're captured by that. If you're going to want to be in the space where you want people, you want your messages to be able to travel across, just have visual films. Have moments that anyone can walk in the middle of the film and understand what the context is. They don't have to start from the beginning. They see an image and the image speaks to them regardless of race, creed, color, whatever, and language. So yeah, just think globally. I also think there's some unique African stories we have too that connect globally. If we tell those kind of stories, you definitely are guaranteed travel.
Okay, what's been your biggest lesson from submitting to or attending film festivals globally?
Yeah, the biggest lesson. What I've discovered, though, this is what I've discovered. I recently I think, is it 2 weeks now? Yeah, it's about last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, I was in Seattle for Over the Bridge. And what I discovered is the universality of our stories, especially if you're telling the stories in a way that transfers. That we Africans can connect to the wider bandwidth of other melanated people, assuming you take the time to tell the story in a way they can digest. Understanding too that there is actually a market for people that want to tell sensible stories. It's a huge market actually. There's a gap that could create an export market if you are serious about telling stories the right way. It's a huge export market because there are a lot of channels, especially in countries like America, that have multiple platforms that will be open to films from the continent. If the films from the continent are curate properly, are well curated and well made. Biggest lesson too is just there's a lot more camaraderie than you would think. There's a lot more space for you as a filmmaker than you would know. The support is incredible, it's tremendous. And there's also admiration. So, yeah.
How do awards and festival selections impact the business side of the film?
So it's all part of it. It's one. The first part I feel is like it validates the filmmaker. It validates you internally. To have people see you, essentially, and not necessarily because in Nigeria too, it's the same, pretty much the same thing. But it just gives you. Firstly, the first feeling you have is, I'm making some progress. That all my labor, people are also seeing what I'm putting out there. The second thing it does for the film is it starts to give the film a certain currency. It's the laurels that you get from festivals begins to mark the film as something that's crucial. Well, socially it becomes crucial because people have an innate fear of missing out on something that's supposed to be current and trendy. So people are like, oh, have you seen this film? It just won this. So that kind of starts to give the film a certain value. Because it's been given value by another body, it starts to have more value. And in turn, it translates for the production team as well as the director. It certainly works for the actors. The actors tend to get a lot of value out of it. The directors may be the last person, because often not known, but their name now starts to get out there. And that value is transferred.
What are the top 3 things a producer should never overlook during production?
That's a very interesting thing. I don't know what it means. The top 3 because I haven't been a producer for a while. I would say the first thing the producer has to keep in view is the resources that are available to complete the film. One of the most important things is how you finish the film. You must have a product at the end of the day. So managing the resources, the budget, I think the second thing would be the experience of that production. How people felt working for that producer is very critical. So that you kind of create a reputation for yourself as someone that people would like to work with. Your love for what it is you're doing becomes contagious, within the context of set. Your sense of purpose as a producer itself drives people to do more. And that affects everybody, including the director. And I think too, the last part is never losing sight of what you're making. I think that's be the third thing. Never losing sight of what you're making. When I used to produce, an older producer once told me, always think about what you're putting in front of the camera. That a lot of people like to put the money behind the camera, right? But what you put in front of the camera is really crucial. So never losing sight of what it is you're making. starting a project and seeing the end of the project, seeing post-production. So you as a producer, even though you're not the director, you already kind of have seen the distribution, you've seen the final product, even though you're not the director, but you know that this is going to be a good project. So what you try to do is to use the resources you have to support that vision and the person doing it.
Fantastic. How do you balance creative vision with budget and time constraints?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do as a director is to tier, like tier means T-I-E-R, to put it at different stages. Because that way you'll be able to manage how much creative effort you put into the budget. Because there are projects you cannot put too much energy into, and it's a sad reality, you know. I would just say if I'm shooting a 30-second commercial for a client, it's different from the energy I'll put into a 90-minute film. Now, that has nothing to do with how much effort. So commercials demand a crazy amount of detail, attention to detail, that you have to keep in view. But you don't need as much stamina, right? You don't need as much stamina, because if you're making a feature film requires, if you're making a feature film requires a lot of stamina. So you have to put it into stages, into tiers. So if I'm making a film, I need to know how much energy I'm putting into beginning, middle, or the end. A commercial can be a long thing, can be 4 days as well, but you're certainly going to spend no less than a month. Then you need to break your energy down from pre-production. How much pre-production am I doing on this project? On TV series, you don't do as much as you probably would do a feature film. So you need to know exactly how much energy, how intense, for instance, depending on the budget, how intense is like your pitch deck going to be, your treatment deck? How much rehearsal time are you going to do? And you will measure this really based on what the production itself demands. So it's very critical to put everything in certain categories. Then you know what energies you're putting into it. And because it's going to be a waste of time to try to put too much energy. You can never have enough energy to put into a film, but certain things don't require so much, because the runway is always different. It's like different kinds of planes need different runways. Smaller planes don't need as much time, to take off. A big plane with a lot of passengers certainly needs a lot more time. So think about it like, in terms of aircraft taking off.
Okay, thank you. From first to close, your films are visually unique. What's your development process like when starting a new project?
Okay. Yeah, I think pre-production is the heart of everything. I have a very visual. Starting from the place of imagination, I would love to spend more time in imagining, and what do they call it again? Doing forecasting. So I think as a director, what you want to do is you want to forecast. You want to imagine the very, very best that this film could be once you've read it. Then what you now do is you start predicting, okay, is it possible I do this way? Is it possible I do that this way? How would I do that? And I thank God that I was a producer first, so I know what's possible. I'm not wild in my imagination. I'm wild in what I imagine, but I'm also very considerate of how things can be done. So my process is really a lot in pre-production. It's in creating a visual storyboard. I used to draw, I don't draw so much anymore. So I try to get as many visual references as possible for myself and also for the crew. I try to plan extensively what goes into the film. Because if you can do that, your quality level is much higher. It's very important that you are able to nail certain things down in pre-production. And you start early by, once you have great ideas, oh, I want to shoot this on the bridge, and I'm going to need 50 cars. You need to know that in pre-production, so that everybody starts working towards that and they're able to apportion the budget. You can't have the idea as pre-production is getting over. Everybody needs to be very aware. So that's also the kind of goals I've also set for myself as an artist, essentially to create imagery that you don't forget easily. That's very important, but that's not the goal. The goal is really to tell the story, but to tell the story in ways that it sticks to the mind.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that you're a creative educator.
Yes.
You mentored creatives and plot media production. Why is mentorship important to the growth of African film?
I think, so my thoughts about I was mentored. I think that's the best way to mention it. One of my key mentors was Femi Odugemi. I didn't even want to direct. I just was being nudged to. I was a producer. I was working with him as a producer, and he kept on nudging, send me DVDs, and it's critical that we are raising, we're cultivating, I think that's a better word. In order for, and Africa is a very verdant, when you think of Africa, you think of forests, you think of, even the Sahel and the savannah, it's a place where things grow. And in order for things to grow, there has to be seed planted. If we expect this industry to have any kind of a future, we must be cultivating the talent. It's even for the ecology of anything, there has to be a cycle of, as some things are passing away, there's new life being passed into it. And a large part of that is you taking the time of whatever it is you think you're doing to also tend to the ecology. You also want certain ideas to live on. We need to have the ideas of who we are. As identity has become more global and identity is becoming this smoothie, it's sort of crucial that people don't forget where the roots of some of this is. And I think what really makes us, what gives us strength is us knowing who we are and what we really bring to the general conversation, either globally or even regionally, or even at the Pan-African level. So it's very critical that we maintain that ecology.
What's one piece of advice you wish someone had told you earlier in your career?
Or I can't. Okay. Maybe. I feel I've always been told. I've been told everything. I just didn't act on it quicker. So I think that conversation should have been internal. I've been around really good people who've always said, this is what I think you should be doing. I didn't act on it as well as I should have. I can't say that I wasn't giving good advice. I was always told, even as someone said to me much earlier that I should start directing. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So, I'm late to the party.
Where do you see African storytelling headed in the next 5 years, especially as global interest grows?
I think it's going to be much, much more matured. One of the things I'm loving is the discovery of really original storytelling, and we're seeing it now as from multiple film festivals. It started about 6 years ago, and you started seeing an emerging class of filmmakers that are capturing the hearts of programmers, of festivals, and of people outside the country. You're also beginning to see even the global West, certain West Africans or Africans who have attained prominence in the West too, coming back. So what I'm seeing our storytelling is going to grow, perhaps a more authentic version of it than we do have now. Some of the titles I know we have right now, some aren't for me very original. They are, it's just a retelling of certain things. But I think it's going to be much more original because we're going to have to dig deeper. There's so much involvement in the industry right now that everybody's playing and people are, checking stories, but there's going to be a sieving for people to get really, really good stories out, really outstanding stories. And I feel that's going to be the next step. Then that finessing, that refinement, it's also going to come. And I recommend that everybody starts to prepare as we have things like AI, which I think AI will help the industry speed, will help in pacing. Stories are going to be told much quicker. There'll be pitch decks being done much quicker. There will be, people are going to be cutting corners. There are going to be more corners cut. That's the sad part of it. But I think out of all of that, there's going to be very strong resonant storytelling. I don't see the camera going anywhere anytime soon, even though there's AI. People are still going to want to capture the world as is. And I think there'll be higher skill levels in technically, but there needs to be stronger curation in the place of storytelling, in script writing, in script development, etc.
Okay, and for our final question, what qualities would catch your attention if a young filmmaker wants to work with you?
Okay, so this is the thing. I think the first thing is, I've been talking about this for a while now, is passion. And passion actually means you love film. That will catch my attention. Like, how much do you love this thing? Film isn't, it might seem cool to be in film, but film is a tough market to be in, So passion will be there. But if you don't have that passion, passion is also curiosity, what you want to know. So a lot of then actual proof of the passion. A couple of projects, what you have in your hands, what are you doing? Whether it's sketches, outlines, stuff, Then stamina, because that's the industry. The industry is, you have to be there. You have to just keep going at it, So I feel, then of course some kind of skill level, something I don't know, something I don't have. Some skill like I don't have, something I don't quite see. I haven't figured out yet. That would definitely keep me. I'm like, okay, what's this? Because as much as I'm a teacher, I've been in film for a while, I'm also a fan. So I'm always a fan of talent. I'm a fan of talent myself. So in a way, I like seeing stuff that I may not necessarily have the time or as past me. I'm like, hey, listen, let's talk about that thing you do.